There was a moment in aviation when engineers believed they had finally conquered the last barrier between the aircraft and the atmosphere, a technology so subtle that passengers would never notice it, and yet so ambitious that it promised to redefine what flight felt like at 40,000 feet. And then, almost without announcement, it disappeared. From the outside, the aircraft that carried it looked unchanged, a sleek fuselage resting on sunlit tarmac, polished aluminum reflecting the horizon, boarding stairs extended with quiet confidence. But inside, beneath the sculpted panels and indirect lighting, there was an experiment unfolding, an attempt to engineer comfort not as a marketing feature, but as a physiological condition. Over the last decade, aviation has shifted from visible luxury to invisible refinement. Cabins are no longer defined by ornament, but by atmosphere. The hum of turbofans has been softened to a distant whisper through layered acoustic insulation. LED lighting flows in warm gradients along curved ceilings, tuned to mirror late afternoon even during overnight crossings. Cabin altitude is lowered where possible, humidity subtly increased, airflow recalibrated so that breathing feels natural rather than recycled. It was within this evolution that a particular technology emerged, designed to go even further. Active cabin stabilization systems intended not merely to dampen turbulence structurally, but to counteract the sensation of motion itself. The premise was elegant. Sensors embedded throughout the airframe would detect micro-vibrations in real time, feeding data into adaptive systems that adjusted cabin elements, seat articulation, floor isolation mounts, even subtle lighting modulation, to reduce the body's perception of movement. In theory, the aircraft would still encounter atmospheric disturbances, but passengers would feel less of them. The sky would remain dynamic, the cabin would remain composed. During early demonstrations, the results were almost uncanny. In mild turbulence, where a glass of water might once ripple, now it barely trembled. The soundscape shifted too. Instead of the low-frequency thrum that typically accompanies light chop, there was a controlled hush, as if the aircraft had moved into denser, calmer air. Executives seated in wide, forward-facing leather chairs described a sensation not of floating, but of steadiness, as though the aircraft had gained weight without sacrificing lift. For premium airlines and business jet manufacturers, the implications were obvious. Long-haul travel is less about distance than endurance. 8, 10, sometimes 15 hours inside a pressurized tube demands more than spacious seating. It demands rhythm. Service must flow without interruption. Lighting must transition gradually to preserve circadian balance. Meals must arrive without sudden jolts. Even the act of walking down the aisle should feel deliberate, not reactive. Active stabilization promised to protect that rhythm. It was, in essence, an attempt to engineer serenity. Yet aviation is an ecosystem of trade-offs. Every additional system introduces weight. Every sensor requires calibration. Every adaptive mechanism demands redundancy. Aircraft are certified not for ambition, but for reliability. Over time, engineers confronted the quiet complexity beneath the elegance. The stabilization units added mass in areas where efficiency mattered most. Fuel burn calculations shifted subtly. Maintenance intervals became more intricate. Airlines, already balancing margins against passenger expectations, began to question whether the incremental gain in perceived comfort justified the operational cost. Meanwhile, parallel advancements were occurring elsewhere. Fly-by-wire systems were becoming more refined, smoothing control inputs with greater precision. Wing designs evolved to flex more naturally, absorbing turbulence structurally rather than electronically. Cabin materials improved, isolating vibration passively through composites and layered flooring. In comparison, the once revolutionary stabilization technology began to feel less essential. It had not failed. It had simply been outpaced. For passengers, nothing dramatic occurred. There were no announcements, no headlines declaring its retirement. Aircraft continued to feel smoother year after year, but for different reasons. The silence of its departure mirrored the subtlety of its existence. And yet, its brief life reveals something profound about modern aviation. The pursuit of comfort is relentless, but rarely visible. Step into a contemporary premium cabin today, and you witness the cumulative result of countless such experiments. The aisle lighting glows softly along the floor, guiding movement during nighttime cruise without disturbing rest. Overhead bins close with damped precision, eliminating the hollow echo that once characterized boarding. Seat ergonomics have evolved from padded chairs to sculpted environments, with lumbar support calibrated to distribute pressure evenly across long durations. In private aviation, entire zones within the cabin are configured not around seat count, but around social flow, conference areas that transition seamlessly into dining spaces, divans that convert into fully flat sleeping surfaces without mechanical theatrics. Even in commercial business class, sliding privacy doors glide with muted assurance, isolating each passenger within a personal micro-environment. These are not decorative gestures. They are engineered responses to human physiology at altitude. The air you breathe is filtered through advanced systems that refresh cabin atmosphere more frequently than in earlier generations. Humidity levels, once uncomfortably low, are managed more intelligently on certain aircraft platforms. Windows are larger, admitting natural light that reduces the psychological confinement of long-haul travel. And beneath your feet, vibration-dampening structures absorb the subtle frequencies produced by engines and airflow. All of it converges toward a singular goal: to make the flight feel effortless. The technology that died in silence was part of that continuum. It represented a moment when aviation dared to intervene not just in aerodynamics, but in perception. It asked whether motion itself could be negotiated, softened, reframed. Its disappearance does not mark failure, rather, it highlights the industry's discipline. In aviation, innovation must harmonize with efficiency. A system that enhances comfort by 5% but increases complexity by 10% may not endure. Instead, its lessons are absorbed, redistributed, refined. Today's cabins are smoother not because one grand solution prevailed, but because hundreds of incremental ones did. Consider the boarding experience alone. From the outside, it appears procedural, passengers walking down a jet bridge into a waiting aircraft. But inside, choreography unfolds. Ambient lighting near the entrance is slightly brighter, welcoming and orienting. Cabin crew movements are measured, voices modulated to maintain calm. Overhead panels diffuse light evenly, avoiding harsh shadows that fatigue the eyes. As pushback begins, engine spool-up is moderated by acoustic treatments that contain the initial surge of sound. The taxi feels controlled, almost restrained. By the time the aircraft rotates and climbs, the transition is seamless. Cruise altitude arrives not with spectacle, but with stability. This is the modern definition of premium flight. Not extravagance, but orchestration. And in that orchestration, even abandoned technologies play a role. They push boundaries. They test assumptions. They reveal what matters most to passengers, not dramatic innovation, but dependable comfort. Over the course of a transcontinental journey, what passengers remember is rarely the complexity behind the walls. They remember how they felt. Did the seat support them through sleep? Did the cabin remain quiet enough for conversation? Did time seem compressed rather than endured? In the most refined aircraft, the answer is often yes, not because of a single breakthrough, but because engineers persistently refine every variable within their control. As descent begins and the aircraft gently lowers through layered clouds, subtle changes occur again. Lighting brightens incrementally to prepare the body for arrival. Cabin crews secure the environment with practiced fluidity. The once distant engine note deepens slightly, yet remains restrained. Touchdown is measured, reversers engaging with controlled authority before easing into taxi. When the door opens and outside air rushes in, the transition feels natural, not abrupt. And that is the quiet triumph of aviation design. The technology that died in silence reminds us that progress is not always linear. Some ideas blaze briefly before fading. Others endure quietly, integrated so seamlessly we forget they were once new. In the world of premium flight, comfort is engineered, not accidental. Luxury is quiet. And the best flights are the ones you barely notice. If this perspective resonates, consider joining us again as we continue exploring the art and science of flight here on Comfort Class.